transforming a former strip club into a standout restaurant venue. Christina, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Your interest in food, first there was a bubble tea venture, I understand.
Yeah, I was an early entrepreneur. So, first kind of crack at the business game was bringing bubble tea to the Twin Cities with the help of my mom. We tried bubble tea in like Texas, I think, and we are like, I think this is going to be big. We should maybe open up a bubble tea shop. But yeah, that was kind of my foot in the door to what then later became a long career of, kind of hospitality, food, drink service, all of that.
So that story of working with your mother on that first venture, there's a refugee story that helped kind of shape your path. Tell us about that.
My parents are Vietnamese refugees, so just pretty much almost 50 years ago to the date, they came over here, fled Saigon, and left with pretty much none of their belongings at all, and
Is
left
this
under a
actually when we
bridge.
see the historical photo with the chopper leaving the embassy? And
Yeah, very much. I mean, my mom was in the chopper. My dad was, and his family were boat people, so they were on crowded boats. His grandma away at sea. It was like very traumatic,
part
sad.
part of the immigrant story we don't understand sometimes is how
Yeah.
challenging it was for people to get here.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Then they went to the refugee camps and then ended up here in Minneapolis, where all Vietnamese people think they're going to end up.
Sure.
No, they were, they're lucky enough to have some sponsors take them in here. But, if you can imagine being a person who lives in 90 to 100-degree weather all the time,
Yeah.
Minnesota is quite a shock.
Yeah, it is even for us as Minnesotans.
I
So,
know. I'm still not used to it, and I was born here.
what lessons do you take from launching the bubble tea and then later Hola Arepa?
I think that being an entrepreneur, starting a business, is just equal amounts optimism and craziness. And, I'm lucky enough to have my mom, who also was an entrepreneur and kind of fearless one at that, kind of model that for me and make it seem normal that you would just, as a young woman, just go start a business. And obviously, we know that's a lot. It's hard work, but it's also so rewarding to be able to create things, and that's just been my only path that I could ever see. So yeah, I it's been a long journey, but I'm glad that I haven't had to work for anybody else since I was probably 17 or 16.
Myself also,
Yeah.
I've had that interesting experience. And sometimes I find it hard to identify with peers around me because I've, truly never had a job per se,
Right.
and I find it to be much harder to be an entrepreneur. But
Yeah,
maybe I'm
it
incorrect.
depends on the day. I think it depends on the day.
Do you believe anyone can be an entrepreneur?
I think that anybody could definitely try. I think people who enjoy it are maybe a different breed. It's hard to say. I think that I don't know, there's all kinds of people that make up the world, and I can't imagine that everybody would want to do what we do, but I do think that if people are interested in that, it takes the hard work, it takes the dedication, it takes a lot of bad days mixed in with the good ones. And yeah, you just have to have some small amount of masochism. You have to be able to just, get beat down and keep coming back for more. So, yeah.
Sure. So with Ola Arepa, explain to us
Mhm.
what is an arepa?
So an arepa it's like Venezuelan or Colombian cornmeal griddle cake patty that you if you imagine you make this kind of like fresh dough every day out of cornmeal and then you cook it all on a griddle. And so it just gets nice and crispy on the outside. It's a little pillowy on the inside. You split it open like a pita and then you just fill it with all kinds of good ingredients, whether it's like meats, cheeses, salsas. And so it's kind of like even for people who haven't heard it, it's like a really familiar kind of like vehicle for flavor. And I love
A
seeing
delivery
people.
device for the fillings inside.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're delicious and it was fun to out of all the things that we could have done when we started a food truck, I again, kind of saw that hole in the market where there weren't a lot like people hadn't heard of arepas here. Like when we opened the food truck and then we were like, well, we're gonna show you. And there's just so many fun different things that you can do with it flavor wise. So then we started our arepa food truck at some point, me and my husband. Yeah.
How does one with a food truck go about trying to find their venues or locations to serve it?
Yeah. I mean, well, we started kind of earlier on when they still hadn't totally figured out all the food truck rules and regulations. So there was back then, you couldn't just like park your food truck anywhere. That it would have to be on certain streets and in certain corridors downtown. And it was a little more complicated. So it was actually funny. It was quite a thing. Like we had a commissary kitchen where, we'd make everything, do all of our prep and store all of our food when it wasn't on the truck. And
Mhm.
then we'd go there every morning at like 6 a.m., make all the dough, do all the things, heat everything up, and then we get it on the truck. And then we'd go downtown and competitively like try to get a
Get the
parking
right spot.
space. And it
Yeah.
was funny because like, the license inspectors at that time, they were just like so tired of us food trucks like trying to park early that, there were all these rules like you can't park until like 10 o'clock. So at 10 o'clock, we'd all just like line up like a bunch of, race cars and then, try to get our favorite
Very
spot.
competitive, yes.
It was crazy, like, sometimes we do, like, we'd lap around the block and until like, musical chairs until you could, "It's time, we can do it," and then you pull in. There is a lot of cutting off of
I bet.
people, things, and, yeah, and our inspector would be there sometimes with his watch and just be like, "Too early, go around." Like, they were just yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy time, and I think it's more orderly these days, I think, and a little less competitive, but it was a Wild West out there for a while, but it was a very fun experience and sometimes soul-crushing.
So experimenting with some of the concepts that you
Mm.
have, how do you balance like traditional cooking with the creativity and things like that? If you're trying to bring something from a certain ethnic culture or something, but you also have to be creative and adapt that to the modern palate.
I think that like so many things, you wanna respect what's there, but then you also wanna put your own twist on it, or at least I guess that's what I wanna do. You can eat 50 different versions of the same dish, and they'll all have little nuances, so just gotta, like, put your little fingerprint on it of exactly how you wanna do things, and I've never been too concerned with authenticity and this has to be exactly how it was in Vietnam. This has to be exactly what a Venezuelan arepa is like. I think that we get to take as chefs just a little bit of creative license with it. And I think that as long as you're respectful of the culture and where everything came from, I don't take much issue with that.
So to use your words, let us in on the secret. What is the Christina Nguyen fingerprint that you put on dishes that your kind of go-to thing?
That's a really good question. That very much in whatever I do, I kind of take a little bit of a Southeast Asian philosophy to my cooking where like it's a balance of a lot of things. Maybe it's like Southeast Asian maximalism where we just want to have, we want something hot, something cold, we want something sour and sweet and crunchy and savory. So I think that it's just kind of like balancing all those and making sure that enough elements are in one dish. Like I'm very much if I'm having something savory, I want to have something sweet and acidic. So I don't know. I guess just making sure that there's a lot of balance, texture, colors, as some chefs call it, too many touches is
Mm.
something I have been accused of. No. I think that sometimes I can't be minimalist. I'm definitely a maximalist when it comes to flavors.
Well, good flavor is very important.
Yeah.
You've made some travels, I believe, to India, Southeast Asia, some other places. How has this influenced how you've created your different restaurants and the foods that you produce?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, one of the things that really inspired me to kind of just start cooking and experimenting with food a lot was just traveling to different places when I was younger and just wanting to recreate some of those flavors because maybe that didn't quite exist in our food scene here in the Twin Cities. So eat something delicious and you're like, I would love to have that again, but there's nowhere in Minneapolis that serves that. Getting to recreate some of those dishes for my friends and family was just something that I would do and have people over for dinner or parties. And
So you
um,
experimented with friends and family. I
I
see.
did,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, and they were happy guinea pigs, which is
Mhm.
great because even when I wasn't that skilled at cooking, they were very kind to me still. but they'd let me experiment on them a lot. But yeah, so I think that that kind of inspired a lot of my love and curiosity for different food and ingredients. And yeah, and traveling that's my life. I love traveling so much. So getting to go to places and trying new ingredients or dishes, and it's definitely something that drives me very much.
What's the next travel place on your list?
That's a good question. Next new travel place on my list. Oh my gosh, I'm so stumped right now. I can't even fully think about, well, I mean, I know that I've definitely been wanting to go back to a lot of different places. I think that I know that I'm going back to Southeast Asia and Vietnam like this coming up spring, but I've been just visiting so many different islands in the Caribbean, because we have a boat down there, a boat business that's in a charter fleet and everything. So we'll probably do a little bit more of that, like visiting the different Caribbean islands and just exploring their unique flavors.
Get
And
to visit some beach bars down there and maybe come up with some drink
oh,
ideas.
oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's always research. Just
Well, that's right.
research, obviously.
So you have a venture called Hi Hi.
Yeah,
I'd like to learn more about that and the background of it too. I guess it was a former strip club.
it sure was. Yeah. It when we toured that building, because we kind of were like, okay, it's great to rent a space, but it would be fun to also own some the real estate that we're putting so much money into to build out. We found this the spot that used to be the 22nd Avenue station, or also known as the Deuce Deuce or the Dirty Deuce. Whoever you talk to, there's a different name
Mhm.
there. And yeah, it had been closed for about 3 years at that point, but I had been there a couple of times, and it's just this infamous spot. And I remember when we looked in the space, as a strip club dive bar doesn't have any windows, you really had to like try to imagine it, not that dark red light and everything. But I just saw it for like, oops, sorry, for the bones of the place. And I definitely have rehabbed and just really renovated some spaces with Burke. Like, we're pretty scrappy, so we can see past the red bar stools and the soot smoke covered walls and stripper pole,
Sure.
all of that. And we were like, this looks like a good restaurant.
So tell us somewhat of the process of converting a non-restaurant into a restaurant. That seems like a daunting task.
Well, it definitely was. And for that project, we got to work with like an architect and talk with them about the possibilities, and how that, like, ask them, like, okay, could we do this? I know it sounds crazy, but they're like, that's weird. We could do that. So yeah, we got to turn the Deuce Deuce plus a barber shop into our beautiful space right now, and then have,
How many square feet and how many seating?
oh my gosh. Well, let's see. We can seat in the summer about, I want to say 220 guests. And in the winter, because, we have a pretty big patio, it's a pretty big space once we sprawl and get everybody in there. God, square footage is escaping me at the moment.
Having a few ventures out there now and
Mhm.
getting your name out there through podcasts and other
Yeah.
earned media that you have, I assume you interact with other entrepreneurs, other people that want to get into business themselves. Do you have any advice or mentoring type things that you ever do? Or do you have any advice you could relay now to someone wanting to get into the restaurant business, such
Oh,
as me?
yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure that how you're going to approach getting into the restaurant business is probably a little different than chef or a great cook who, wants to start their own place. But I always make sure to just tell them the reason why so many restaurants go under in the first place is because restaurants are expensive to build out. So don't be afraid of that secondhand space. Or if you do have to build out a vanilla shell into a restaurant, go on the auction sites, get the used equipment, get scrappy with it. Go to the place with the used stuff, because it's pretty much as soon as it gets taken out of the building, it's worth pennies on the dollar.
Sure.
And again, sadly, because so many restaurants do close, there's really good restaurant equipment that's getting auctioned off all the time. So I would say start scrappy until you have some revenue coming into the door, and then, or like we did, build your concept not from a restaurant, but start it as a food truck, start it as a pop up or a farmer's market stand, and just make sure there's like a proof of concept there, and don't be afraid. Just kind of like build a little more gradual.
Because that smaller scale can allow you to adapt and pivot a little bit easier, I suppose.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And also for us, it was helped us not have to get investors involved because I know that a lot of people are, especially if you're a great chef who's worked at different restaurants and you've worked at a big restaurant with a perfect kitchen and you can get investor dollars, you kind of want to go for that grand kitchen and that grand everything. But I think that being able to build it and retain that ownership is kind of worth it, even if it feels a little humbling. And since we had a humble beginning, I don't feel that need for that big ego kitchen, but it's a trap that people fall into sometimes that I totally understand. But sometimes that just ends up getting you in the hole before you even had anybody try your food or, all that.
What is the response from the local restaurant community about your concept, do you think?
That's a good question. I mean, I hope it's positive.
Mhm.
I think our restaurant community is pretty tight knit and I mean very supportive. So whenever we're doing different events or we throw our different charity sort of events, we always have chefs who are willing to come be part of it. So I'm hoping that they also appreciate my restaurant just like I appreciate theirs. Who knows?
Do you have,
They might hate it. I hope not.
so, Christina, being a food connoisseur yourself, is there a type of food that you're really interested in and maybe want to check out in the near future?
In Minneapolis?
Yes, and yeah.
Yeah, there's so many places that are on my wanting to eat list. And obviously, like, I am just a big fan of really delicious, bold flavors and immigrant food. And I know that there's, so many awesome different, like Laotian or Hmong cuisine seen places that have opened up that a lot of which I've tried and some of which I haven't yet. So those places are always on my try list. I know that there's some spots in St. Paul that I need to go visit because I don't get around that way enough. I think there's like a Burmese spot there that I've been wanting to try out. I don't know. I want to eat it all, but I don't have nearly enough time.
It's funny you said that. I mentioned earlier I lived in St. Paul, and most of my friends at the time were from Minneapolis, and people don't seem to cross the river. There's
No,
if
yeah,
if I was having a party at my house or something like that, I would get a lot of
right.
declines and stuff because people are like, "Well, we don't really go to St. Paul."
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you'd be surprised. It's right there, but somehow it's a challenge.
Mhm. So, Christina, what's next on your radar?
I guess with the concept of like Kaizen are just always like gradually improving both of our restaurants more and more every year. I think that some people would say that opening one restaurant 11 years ago and then the second one 7 or 8 years ago and not having opened anything since then. I mean, I guess there was a pandemic, but other than that,
That pesky pandemic.
that pesky pandemic got in the way of opening a third concept. We're like slow growing because we also just know how much we can always be working on and kind of improving and fine tuning like our two restaurants right now. But I mean, there's probably a third concept there sometime in the future. We had like gotten close on some different spaces last year that ended up falling through in due diligence, but sometimes you dodge a bullet here and there, and
So
I'm
you
not
think that that
too
will motivate the next move then is finding the right space and being inspired by that, do you think?
I think so. I think there's that. I mean, I have like an entire notes thing of all of the different new businesses that I want to start too someday
Not
that
necessarily in restaurant.
no, not necessarily in restaurants at all, but some of them food adjacent, some completely not.
Mhm.
But yeah, they're all feel
So
like
don't typecast you in food.
don't typecast me in food. I mean, I might start a fencing company now that I know how to do that. No, I'm kidding. Like I could make an easy 10 grand a
Inspiration comes from
day.
many ways. So.
Right, exactly.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I being an entrepreneur, it's hard to, I mean, this is the longest I've zoned in on, one kind of thing. So, I wouldn't put it past me to go in some completely different direction someday as a little side project or something.
Okay.
Who knows?
Well, Christina Nguyen, we really appreciate hearing more about your adventures in developing your restaurants with Hola, Arepa, and Hi Hi. And thanks for your time.
Oh, thank you so much.